Kelly Clarkson. All right. Hey everyone, it's Tony from the Handlebar Workshops. Today we're in the garage workshop. With what we're working on today, normally I'd be outside, but it might rain and I don't want all my power tools out in the rain. So here we're talking about how I break down sheet goods, like plywood, MDF, stuff like that. A lot of people you'll see use one of these, the 1.5" insulation, the rigid insulation. They'll throw it on the ground, throw their sheet good on top of it, and then they'll run their circular saw over that and allow that to cut into the insulation. And that works, and that's great. And if that's what you have, great, use it. Doesn't work so well for me. Let me put this away. The insulation doesn't really work for me. Working on the ground doesn't really work for me. I've got a bad back, and that's kind of rough. I like to have it up a little bit higher, a little bit elevated. So I use some sawhorses with 2x4s in between. Now I've got 4 2x4s here, and you can see they've all got lines through them. And I just lay out the sheet, and I'll just run my circular saw right over that, just like you would with the pink insulation. You want to make sure you're not cutting all the way through, otherwise this, the 2x4 will cut itself in half and fall on the ground and stuff like that. But it keeps everything up nice and high where it works for my back. So it's a little bit more adaptive that way. The sawhorses are adjustable, so they can go from kind of low to this height here, which is pretty much where I keep them. But it's really nice to have that adjustability. So if you're working on something that's kind of tall, you can drop them a little bit, work on it up here, or raise them up and work something flat. One nice thing about this setup is that I can do a cross cut and things won't fall off. Or I can rip, and as long as I put it in between two of them, one of them's not, neither of them are going to fall. They're going to stay right where they need to be. And I can adjust these around so I can get right, so I can just get my blade right in there, and I can set it up right and just go right on down. And I won't hit any of the wood at all, so I don't even put anything in there. And even with all these cuts through it like this, you can still see that it's fairly strong. I wouldn't stand on it, but it's good enough for sort of panel good. And there's also the issue of cost. In my area, that insulation, that rigid insulation, costs almost 3 times as much as 4 2x4s. And then they're also easier to store. I can just stack these up and put them up in my lumber rack, or in a corner, or wherever I want to put the wood at the time. I always find storing 4x8 sheets of anything, whether it's plywood, MDF, or even the pink insulation, difficult. I've got a small shop, not much storage space, so it's nice to be able to just put these away and not have to store that 4x8 sheet of insulation. Only pull it out when I need it. And if I'm working on something fairly small, I don't need all 4 pieces. I can just go down to 2 and leave the 2 stored somewhere else, or put them off to the side until I need them again. And if you're also having problems reaching all the way across with it up high, you can still lay these 4 pieces on the ground and still get on the ground and cut it that way, just like you would with a piece of pink insulation. Now, when I mentioned that the 2x4 method is cheaper than the insulation method, I'm not taking into account the cost of the sawhorses. I assume you've either made some yourself or bought some for some other reason, but that you already have the sawhorses. Like I said, you could also throw the 2x4s on the ground just like you would the insulation. But these are the sawhorses I use, and these weren't terribly expensive. They were maybe $40 or something like that. I'll try and leave a link to Amazon down below. But they extend out so I can get a full 4 feet across here. And then I can also adjust the height of how high I want the top to be. And then you open it up to lock it in place. And it is rock solid. It's all my weight right on top of there. And then to put it away, they're easily ready to go. And once building your project is complete, you can use it to paint or finish. It gives nice 4-way airflow on the top and bottom because there's open areas here where the air can get to. And if you get paint or finish on it, it's no big deal. You're just going to be cutting through it again eventually in the future anyway. So if you found this tool tip helpful, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up or hitting the subscribe link down below so you can get more content like this as we release it. Maybe share it around to some other friends, because that'll definitely help the channel out. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Alright, Kelly Clarkson.